Hello guys, welcome back to my channel and enjoy this fanfic part 3. Rumors. Hokage-sama, I brought the captain, said the Anbu member as he disappeared in a blur, leaving behind the captain of the Anbu and the Hokage. Kakashi, how goes the Sasuke observation period? Asked Tsunade with a gravely serious look on her face. Kakashi's visible eye twitched for a second until he calmed his silent anger. He has been acting strange, Kakashi confessed with a solemn look in his eyes. He spends a good portion of his time writing in a scroll, but he's incredibly careful. He always closes it when I attempt to see what he has written. He's keeping tabs on me like I am on him. Tsunade sighed and said, "Bring him in, I have a few questions for him." Quote, Uchiha Sasuke. Many people knew the name and many people know what befell his clan. However, not many knew how it affected him. Not many knew how deeply he was pushed that fateful night and how far he would go to kill the one responsible. Uchiha Sasuke, the last of the Uchiha literally now. Not many knew why, not many knew how, but almost all knew he was back. Now he was sitting in his old teammate's favorite food stop, a sign hanging outside calling for a going out of business sale. Sasuke smirked to himself as he read the sign. Naruto was the only way this guy stayed in business. Well, maybe he'll help the old man and young girl along. I'll have a bowl, pork. The old man nodded thankfully and began to make the bowl with Godspeed. Sasuke crossed his hands in front of his face in his patented thought look. He had recently killed his brother, rejoined Naruto and Sakura separately, rejoined Konoha, then threw them to the snake. Good riddance. If they weren't dumb enough to trust him, maybe they would have seen this coming. Maybe he was spending too much time with that snake Sanin. Ramen's ready, sir, said the old man as he slid the bowl to Sasuke. Yeah, Sasuke said, tossing his money on the counter, then proceeded to eat his bowl. More thoughts plagued him as he ate. Why did he feel this sudden feeling? Why did he feel this stomach-clenching feeling? Hey Sasuke-kun, came a voice from the entrance of the ramen shop. Sasuke turned his gaze and found that it was the pink-haired girl from his old team. Sakura, Sasuke said in acknowledgement. I never thought I'd find you here, she said as she sat down next to him. Then why are you here? Asked Sasuke, purposely not looking at her. I was hungry. Besides, with Naruto AWOL, this place could use all the help it could get. Sakura said before she placed her order of vegetable ramen. From there the two began talking like old friends again. Sakura laughing and Sasuke smirking and chuckling. Sasuke, why did you leave? Asked Sakura from nowhere. Sasuke stared into his bowl of ramen, running over the reasons, his mind screaming at him to tell her everything. I needed more power, Sasuke said simply and coldly as he finished his bowl. Sasuke, Sakura said in a pleading voice, but Sasuke had already stood up and stormed out of the shop, leaving Sakura to stare at his back sadly. Why did I go? Sasuke questioned himself as he walked to his apartment. I needed to get stronger. I killed my brother, but at what cost? I need to stop thinking like this. Sasuke thought, but he was reminded of his mission, his orders, the incident. Sasuke, said the darkness radiating snake Sanin. Yes, Orochimaru, asked Sasuke, obviously still holding no respect in his teacher. I have a mission for you. You will be going to Konoha. You are to gain their trust, then you are to map out all of Konoha and send it back through Bird. When that is accomplished, you are to stay in Konoha awaiting further instruction. Is that clear? Said Orochimaru as Sasuke bowed. I understand, Orochimaru, Sasuke said as he stood and turned. Good. Go see Kabuto about your equipment, Orochimaru said as he walked away from the young Uchiha. Yes, sir, Sasuke said with a quiet growling tone. He hated Kabuto, always had, always will. Sasuke walked down the halls of the Otokage Tower until he reached the equipment room. Inside he saw the white flash of hair and shine of a pair of glasses and knew who it was. Kabuto, Sasuke said angrily as he entered the room. Oh Sasuke, how nice to see you. Kabuto said with a slightly twitching eye. Sasuke grabbed everything he needed and was ready to leave until he heard Kabuto say, "So how does it feel, Sasuke? You get to betray the same village twice. You betrayed them just as Orochimaru did," was Sasuke's cool rebuttal. "Ah, I was not a native of Konoha although I was raised there," said Kabuto with a smirk. "That made no sense," Sasuke said with a skeptical look. "All right, Vessel," said Kabuto, "be sure to say hi to Naruto. I'm sure you and him have plenty of catching up to do after you almost killed him." Sasuke twitched and formed several hand seals in a flash. "Okay, helmet head, you asked for it." Sasuke jumped rooftop to rooftop with a satisfied smirk on his somewhat beaten-looking face. Oh, this was sweet, far sweeter than he hoped it to be. Far behind him, hanging from the lowest corner of Otokage Tower was Kabuto. His shirt has been pulled over his head and his hands and arms had been tied with it. Around his ankles were his pants showing the bright pink boxers he wore underneath. On Kabuto's stomach was a bullseye made up of shuriken. Orochimaru just happened to be leaving Otokage Tower and he just happened to look up as he did, just to check the weather of course. "What the?" Orochimaru said as he saw a depantsed Kabuto hanging from Otokage Tower by his shirt. Sasuke reached his apartment and it was near sundown. He knew that this was the end of a day rare to be in the coming weeks. A day of complete peace. Orochimaru would invade, he would conquer, and Sasuke would be his key. "Sasuke," came a voice behind him just as he reached the door to his apartment. Sasuke turned his head to look at the Anbu standing behind him. "The Hokage wants to speak with you." Quote. Sasuke nodded and turned. "Okay. Kakashi-sensei." Kakashi's visible eye narrowed and he said, "I am not you sensei, nor am I your friend." Kakashi disappeared in a puff of smoke leaving Sasuke to go to Hokage Tower immediately. Naruto's golden-edged irises began to glow and the fist slowed to where Naruto could dodge it. As Naruto turned away he could see the arm was faintly glowing, then with a bright spark the glowing ceased and the arm returned to the fighter's side. Naruto's eyes returned to their normal dormant state and he realized who had attacked him. "Neji. What the hell was that for?" Naruto asked in confusion rather than anger. Neji slid into the traditional Juken stance and answered with a volley of precise and even deadly strikes. Naruto blinked and just like before his eyes glowed, slowing the world around him and allowing him to easily dodge the attacks. They even gave a clearer outline of the chakra Neji was putting into the strikes. "I really need a name for this," Naruto said as he watched Neji's palm go by his face in almost slow motion. With one last dodge Naruto grabbed Neji's wrist and twisted it until it was behind his back. Using his tails he wrapped Neji's other arm and his legs so he was completely immobile. "Okay Neji, what is this all about?" Naruto asked as he held Neji's arm behind his back. Neji growled out, "Befouling Hinata and breaking the trust Hiashi-sama placed in you." Naruto's entire face turned a ghastly white and Neji took this opportunity using a quick kaden to throw Naruto off himself. Naruto slammed into a wall but was cushioned on reflex by his 5 tails. Neji took a deep breath and slid into a very familiar attack stance. "You're in range of my Divinat. Ion Field." Hinata was almost dancing on air as she walked to her room in the Hyuga mansion. She just had the most wonderful day with Naruto-kun and no one had dared to disturb them. He said that he liked spending time with her. She had an experience with what could only be described as heaven. "Today was a great day. Hinata-san, Hiashi-sama requests your presence in his office," said a branch house member that had just bowed to her. Hinata froze. Okay, her day just had a severe turn downhill. Hinata slowly trod the hall down to her father's study. This was not good. He never requested her in his office unless it was to scold her for something she had done wrong that shamed the clan. She quietly slid the door open to find Hiashi sitting calmly at his study, his tired eyes scanning a scroll set before him. He rubbed his tired eyes then turned his head up to look at his daughter in the door. "Ah Hinata, come in," he said as he swiftly rolled the scroll up and placed it on the ground next to where he was seated. Hinata nodded nervously and entered, taking a seat before her father. Hinata, I've been hearing a few rumors from the branch house members, care to explain them? Hiyashi said as he picked up his cup of tea and took a sip. What rumors, father? Hinata asked in fearful confusion. The most common is of you and Naruto betting together. Hiyashi said, causing Hinata's face to burn red to the roots of her hair. What? Hinata asked with wide eyes. Oh yes, amusing story, care to explain? Hiyashi asked with a serious stare. I never be betted with Naruto-kun, Hinata said, her blush and a slight nervous stutter still present but much more diluted and a serious glare on her face. Naruto-kun and I just went on a picnic today. And nothing happened. Hinata said, knowing she just said something she probably shouldn't have. Hiyashi stared for a few moments until his lips turned upwards in a small smile. That's good to hear, Hinata. Getting out of your shell, I see. Well, I suppose I should talk to Hidoko about those rumors she's been spreading. You're free to go, and if you see Hidoko, send her in, please. Thank you. Hinata blinked in confusion. That's all, father. Hiyashi nodded and picked up the scroll he had put on the floor before and laid it on the short table set before him. I don't see anything wrong with it, besides a young girl like you should be getting on more dates. Quote. Hiyashi said as his eyes dropped to the scroll he had. Hinata blushed as Hiyashi continued, you know your mother and I, we didn't have an arranged marriage. Oh, the council hated the fact I married someone from outside the clan, but all the intermarriage just didn't seem right to me. Quote. Hinata blinked in confusion. She didn't have that many solid memories of her mother, but she could remember that was a very kind person, always having a treat for her and a bottle for the baby Hanabi. She always wondered why her and Hanabi's eyes were a little darker and different shade than the rest of the Hyuga clan. Your mother was a very beautiful and kind person, Hinata, you remind me of her. Now you should be going, I have to revise this scroll as soon as possible, Hiyashi said as he read the scroll with an ink brush at the ready. Yes, father, Hinata said as she left in a hurry. Hiyashi smiled and with a few quick strokes of his ink brush the scroll was revised. He closed the scroll with a sense of accomplishment as he read the title on the edge, The Curse Seal. Single quote. Naruto's eyes slowed the world and the strikes Neji threw still came like flashes of lightning. Naruto barely had time to dodge and a few times he did get a good hit or two. When Neji's attack stopped and Naruto returned to the world of normal moving objects, Neji was exhausted and Naruto's right arm and left abdomen felt numb and useless. I'm telling you, Naruto huffed. Apparently the slowing of the world really ate up chakra. I didn't do anything with Hinata-chan. Neji scowled and despite his chakra drainage he prepared for another powerful attack. Fine. You don't believe me. Naruto said as he began to wave his tails back and forth, taking great care to rub them together. Neji watched the spectacle in confusion and the next thing he knew he was on his back, his head throbbed, and he tasted copper. Damn it, he said as he sat up. He slowly opened his eyes and took a look around, finding he was in his and Naruto's room. Oddly enough, the world had a blue tint to it. He put a hand on his head and rubbed his temples, attempting to quell the headache that threatened to split his head in two. You're awake, came a voice from across the room from him. He turned his now light-sensitive eyes to the voice, finding Naruto sitting on his own bed. However, to some point you deserved this, you know, Naruto said with a smug smirk. Neji grumbled but decided against the impending fight in favor of lying back on his bed and closing his eyes. I told you I didn't do anything to Hinata-chan. I don't know what made you think that, but it's a lie. I wouldn't do anything with her without marriage. I have at least some honor, Naruto said as he lay on his own bed. What the hell did you hit me with? Neji groaned out in pain, accepting whatever Naruto had just said. Naruto snickered and said, Kitsune Raiko, the effects should wear off in a little while. Raiko, since when did you learn electricity? Neji asked while he continued to massage his temples. Since the other day when I gained my fifth tail. Didn't you notice how fast I was moving earlier? Naruto said plainly. Neji had noticed and hell he had been pissed. It looked like the idiot easily dodged him too, like he was moving faster than the world. How did you dodge my attacks? Asked Neji holding his head and looking out with a squinted eye at Naruto. That, oh it's my. Naruto paused, his face contorted in thought until he opened his eyes and grinned, it's my Kitsunegan. Quote, how long did it take you to think that up? Neji said with a one-eyed glare. 2 seconds why? Naruto asked causing Neji's returning thought to surface again, idiot. Try and think of something better. Quote. Neji groaned. Yeah, seriously kid. Kitsunegan. What is that? Screamed Kyuubi in Naruto's mind. Whatever. Night Neji, Naruto said as his tail reached over and flicked off the light. Night Fox just keep it down, Neji said as he turned over and fell asleep face down in his bed. Naruto lay on his back staring at the ceiling and thinking until he slowly fell into the world of dreams and the training from Kyuubi. Naruto landed on the ground on his hands and feet after freshly dodging a drilling electrical attack from his sensei. Very good Naruto, Kyuubi complimented quickly before he drove his tails into the ground of the tunnel. Naruto's eyes shot open and in an instant he was on the ground doubled over in pain. But electricity can travel through the ground Naruto. You're not all here right now are you kid? Kyuubi asked trotting over to the slowly recovering boy. I'm fine Kyuubi-sensei. Let's keep going, Naruto said as he jumped up and slowly forced chakra into his eyes making the world slow down little by little. Kyuubi jumped back but not quickly enough to miss being singed by a burst of fire mixed with electricity that Naruto had just thrown. Shaking it off Kyuubi raised his tails and predictably Naruto jumped, leaving him in the open air for Kyuubi to send a large wave of electricity and fire at him. Naruto was hit with the full brunt force of the attack and was sent careening into the far wall of the cage. Kyuubi sighed and tapped his tails on the ground. Kid, you're not concentrating, Kyuubi said as Naruto limped his way out of the darkness of Kyuubi's cage. Could it have anything to do with that Hyuga girl? Naruto glared at Kyuubi and growled, shut up you dumb fox. Kyuubi's eyes opened in shock. This boy really does get defensive, I should warn him. Kyuubi cleared his throat and said, I suggest you don't do things like that kid. A kitsune gains its tails by either proving its worth or bringing honor and fortune to its family. Right now you're gaining tails in record time and that's good. But insulting your master, not honorable and you could get a tail revoked. Naruto sighed and bowed, I apologize Kyuubi-sensei. Can we get off the subject now? Yeah, let's get working kid, Kyuubi said with very slight worry for the kid. He had never seen the kid so distracted but he could understand it. The kid had never known love, he had never known any greatly deep feeling other than hate. Sure he had good friendships and crushes like with that Sakura girl but he hadn't known what he was feeling now. He had a hard time dealing with it and he had an awkward time having it returned. Kyuubi smiled to himself, he knew what to get the kid going. I have new jutsu for you. Kyuubi said and in a snap Naruto had taken the bait. New jutsu, Naruto said with his insane grin once again. Kyuubi almost laughed, good to have the kid back in high spirits. He was such a for new jutsu. Sasuke looked up as he approached the great Hokage Tower of Konoha and unconsciously compared it to the Otokage Tower of the Sound. Otokage Tower is taller, but Hokage Tower is wider, he thought as he dropped his head to look directly in front of him. Sasuke coolly walked past the intern who didn't even bother to raise her voice to the powerful Uchiha. Sasuke opened the doors of the Hokage's office and sat down in the chair across the desk from the exhausted leader. Tsunade glared at the boy as he sat down in the chair across from her, her hands crossed on the desk in front of her. Sasuke, Tsunade began, I've been hearing word that you've been performing some things that have raised some suspicions from your Anbu detail. Care to explain? Sasuke said nothing and brought from his pocket a rolled-up scroll which he tossed to Tsunade. Tsunade unrolled the entire scroll seeing an unfinished map of what looked like Otogakure. You told me I couldn't become a genin again until I produced something of value to your chief strategist, correct? Asked Sasuke coolly. Sasuke couldn't help but smirk at Tsunade's wide eyes. He had planned this a while ago. If he were ever to go to Konoha again, he decided to give his home village at least a little advantage. Too bad he had already given Otogakur all it needed. Sasuke winced to himself. What the hell is this feeling? He discreetly put a hand on his stomach and gave off a shock of light healing chakra to himself, something he learned from Orochimaru. However, the wave of chakra did nothing and the feeling remained. It was as if his stomach had been forcefully ripped out, turned upside down, and put back in with a rusty knife. This is very good, Sasuke. Do you remember enough to finish it? Questioned Tsunade, who rolled up the scroll and threw it back to Sasuke. Sasuke caught the scroll, stood and pocketed it. I'll have it on your desk by tomorrow. Can I go now? He asked. Not waiting for an answer, he went to the door and left quickly without so much as a farewell. Well, Kakashi? Asked Tsunade as she tapped her finger on the desk. Kakashi in full Anbu uniform appeared from the shadows, a glare in his one visible eye. He was lying, was Kakashi's three-word answer. About what? Having it tomorrow or him making the map? Asked Tsunade, to which Kakashi replied, about being our ally. With that, Kakashi disappeared in a puff of smoke, leaving the Hokage to reach for her freshly acquired, emergency, bottle of sake. Days passed. Sasuke followed up on his word and gave the completed map to Tsunade the next day. He was soon placed into a genin team under a Junin instructor, but still on high probation. Naruto lived peacefully in the Hyuga household, having brief encounters with a certain branch member who seemed to keep a close eye on him, someone he had come to know as Hidoko. Neji had given Naruto the benefit of the doubt but still kept a weary eye on him due to the Kyuubi in Naruto's natural jester-like attitude. Naruto constantly trained under Kyuubi's instruction and grew from it. His illusions didn't need much improvement, so Kyuubi had focused on Naruto's lightning, fire, and his Dujutsu, newly dubbed the Sekkagen after many other failed names. He went on many other outings with Hinata, more than once stopping at the Ichiraku ramen, much to Tsuki's joy. From that day on, the sign displaying going out of business was taken down. A week after the Itachi incident, Tsunade dubbed Hinata and Neji well enough to go on missions, so they were gone or often than not. With the home empty and nothing to do, Naruto would frequently get bored and seek entertainment in the village, but with the Foxy fan club on the prowl, Naruto had to take careful steps. Naruto found that in this several-week-long time of relative peace he was swiftly growing bored. He needed action. He wanted a damn mission. Naruto smirked as he stormed past the intern, who had just plain given up on stopping anyone. Oba-chan, I need a mission. I need action. I need something to get my brain unnumbed. Naruto yelled, waking the napping Hokage from her dreams. Naruto, do you know what time of day it is? Yeah, 3 in the afternoon, Naruto said as he crossed his arms indigently. Tsunade blinked, then glared at Naruto. Fine, fine. Tsunade sat up and ruffled through some papers, bringing a few to the surface. It seems that there is a Chunin exam coming up in a few weeks, and you are still a genin technically. This could get you relief of your boredom and you could move up a rank, Tsunade said with a smile as Naruto's eyes lit up and he grinned an insane smile. Yes, Naruto said as he pumped his fist in the air, 2 birds with 1 stone. One problem, Tsunade said with a sigh. Naruto blinked as Tsunade said, you need a team to enter. 2 people to be exact. Naruto groaned, oh come on Oba-chan. I don't need a team. I know you can pull some strings, just get me in, come on, Naruto said with a foxy smirk. Tsunade's eye twitched. Naruto's kitsune seduction no match for her anger. Oh, she could have vaulted him out of the building, but no, that would be too easy on him. This one is going to be thoroughly punished. Oh, I can, Naruto, quite easily. But for that Oba-chan crack, you're stuck rounding up a team. There are the few genin who have either had a team member quit or the team member was lost in some other way. You only have a few days to find a team, so you better hurry up, Naruto Baka. Tsunade smirked as she tossed a small pile of 6 scrolls at Naruto, 3 piles each with 2 scrolls per pile. Naruto's eye twitched in anger, but he held back and said, whatever. Oba-chan. With that he sped off before receiving a massive punch from the Sanin's legendary fist. Tsunade seethed in her seat but let out a breath and sat down in her chair. God. I feel sorry for those poor genin, Tsunade muttered before she lay her head down to take a quick nap. Naruto looked through the papers as he walked from the Hokage Tower back to the Hyuga mansion. None of these guys are cool enough for my taste, but I have to choose one of them. It's either that or no Chunin exams for me. Or them. Here's a couple that took it a few times over. 1 year behind me too. Naruto mused as he looked at the particular paper. Naruto decided to shuffle it in the back of his mind as he walked the grounds of Hyuga Mansion. He was getting more bored by the second until of course he spotted the younger Hyuga main house girl walking the garden to the training ground, every second or so checking her surroundings. She's gotten more careful, like that's gonna help her, Naruto thought as he slipped into one of his kitsune illusions. Hanabi treaded the path to the training grounds very carefully. Ever since she had fallen into a pit due to an illusion, she always watched her step. She had her senses on high alert and even had the Byakugan active just to catch a glimpse of Naruto's golden tails. When she entered the clearing of the training grounds, she deactivated the dujutsu her clan was famous for and went about her usual routine of practicing with a training dummy. Suddenly she felt as if she wasn't alone and she stopped her Juken strikes upon the poor defenseless puppet. She activated the Byakugan and looked around but saw nothing. No flash of golden fur and shine of blue and golden eyes. She sighed. All these tricks from the fox were messing with her mind. She returned to her sparring with the inanimate object, still feeling the stare of eyes upon her back. Suddenly, as if saving her from a fate worse than death, her father appeared from the path. Hanabi, that's enough training for the day. Go inside and rest, Hiyashi said with a tone of voice that said do not argue. Hanabi bowed and left, leaving Hiyashi alone in the training grounds. Naruto, I think we should have a talk, Hiyashi said just as Naruto peeled himself from the kitsune illusion he had created. Naruto scratched the back of his head and smiled nervously. Yes Hiyashi-sama. Naruto, you have to stop the illusions on Hanabi, or at least make them less frequent, Hiyashi said. Naruto laughed nervously but nodded and said, sure thing Hiyashi-sama. Another thing Naruto, what are your interests in Hinata? Hiyashi asked with a serious glare on his face. Naruto looked at Hiyashi and said, I already said I would protect her no matter what. Those rumors were just rumors. Hiyashi nodded and said, but what are your intentions? Naruto's eyes narrowed and he said, I said those rumors were just rumors. Hiyashi matched Naruto's glare and said, rumors are rumors, but I want to know, are you courting my daughter or not? Quote. Naruto opened his eyes in surprise. What had he just asked him? What? Naruto asked in confusion. Are you courting my daughter? Hiyashi said, punctuating each word. Naruto stared confused. Was he? He had been spending a lot of time with Hinata, wanting to know more about her. The main reason he wanted to live here was so he could be around her. I don't know, Naruto said in an unsure tone. What do you mean you don't know? Do you care enough for my daughter to want to marry her or do you not? Do you want to always be there for her or do you not? Are you courting her or are you not? Hiyashi asked harshly. I vowed to protect her. I want to be with her. I'd use my life to protect her. Yes I am, Naruto finished as he crossed his arms in a defiant stance. Hiyashi and Naruto met gazes for an instant, Naruto seeing the eyes of a leader and a father in Hiyashi's pupilless gaze and Hiyashi seeing an Umbria cable will in Naruto's cerulean and golden orbs. One side of Hiyashi's mouth turned up in a semi-smile and he said, I expect nothing but the best for my daughter Uzumaki. Only a man of Hokage skill is someone I see worthy for her to marry. Quote, Naruto blinked then smirked wide, I intend on being that man then Hiashi-sama. If you want proof then let's have a little match. Hiashi gave a mild scoffing laugh and said, this will be interesting. How about a little bet? Such as? Naruto asked as Hiashi pulled a stack of scrolls from his robes. I see that you intend on participating in the Chunin exams. If you win I will help in your training and possibly teach you some techniques that do not require the Byakugan, Hiashi said as he waved the stack of scrolls. And if I lose? Naruto asked. You don't enter the Chunin exams and you cease courting my daughter, Hiashi said calmly. Naruto turned the thought over in his head and smirked. Alright, I accept the terms. Hiashi smiled and tossed the scrolls to the side and slid into the Juken fighting pose. Naruto took a deep breath then began waving his tails back and forth slowly gathering the energy he needed for his attack. Hiashi gave Naruto no time to gain the upper hand and he attacked with blinding speed attacks. Naruto's eyes widened and his Sekkagen activated slowing the world to a snail pace. Hiashi stuck viciously with his attacks and like Neji, he found it hard to land a hit on the fox boy. He suddenly disappeared causing Naruto to disengage his Sekkagen and look around in normal world time. Suddenly he felt the wind whipping behind him and then the powerful hit from Hiashi's perfected Kaden. Hiashi came out of his spin and before Naruto could react Hiashi had preformed the closing of his Tenketsu completely blocking his chakra. Well, it seems that I am the victor, Hiashi said in a disappointed tone. Naruto smirked and said, you would think that wouldn't you? Suddenly Hiashi doubled over in pain as the electricity struck him through his feet. Naruto smirked and with the help of two of his tails, rose into a semi-standing position. I think you forgot the Tenketsu in my tails, or do they not have any? Naruto asked as his remaining three tails began to wave again. Hiashi rose as quickly as he could and took off at Naruto ready to disable his tails in a flash. Just as Hiashi laid his open palm on one tail it reacted much like a static shock and Hiashi had to back away lest he get more than a slight shock. Clever Naruto, Hiashi said as he looked at the slight burn mark on his palm. Well I can't beat you like this and you can't attack me, Naruto said as he continued to wave his tails as two of them supported his body. I believe that means a draw, Hiashi said as he let his arms fall to his sides. Then who wins? Asked Naruto as his Tenketsu slowly began to return to normal thanks to his body's swift healing abilities. Logically no one does, but since you were able to draw me to a stalemate, I'll train you, Hiashi said with a small smirk. Naruto didn't smile, he only glared and said, and Hinata. Hiashi laughed lightly and said, until you can show me you are worthy of being the Hokage. Naruto smirked and flexed his fingers slowly getting feeling back into them. I'll see you early tomorrow morning for training, and before I go. You know that branch girl by the name of Hitoko. She was the one who spread the rumors about you and Hinata, said Hiashi as he left Naruto to heal and revel in this new information. Oh this is going to be sweet, thought Naruto as he forced more chakra to his affected Tenketsu, intent on getting his well-needed revenge. Naruto sat in the realm of dreams, his sensei sitting before him as a game board sat between them. Hey, Kyuubi said harshly snapping Naruto from his daze. I said your move, Kyuubi said with half-closed eyes showing his aggravation. Oh yeah, Naruto said looking at the board with his thoughtful gaze. He quickly moved a piece then went back into his vacant stare. Kid, your mind isn't here right now, Kyuubi said as he called Naruto's attention back into the living for what seemed to be the 16th time tonight. Oh sorry but I'm a bit distracted. I have training tomorrow and… Naruto trailed off but Kyuubi knew where this was going. Courting the Hyuga girl, Kyuubi finished to which Naruto turned his head away with a blush. Hey, it's no big deal kid. With your kitsune seduction on even partially she can't help but love you. Besides if not her, then you could have any number of females at your beck and call for anything you could want, Kyuubi chuckled. Naruto groaned at his teacher, this fox was worse than Ero Sanin sometimes. It's not that. Well, it is, but I'm lost here. It's not like, well, I do like her, but courting her. I don't know how. But maybe I do, but how? Ah. Too confusing, he said as he grabbed his wild golden hair. Kid, you've said it yourself. You would do anything to protect her. You would give your life for her. I'm no expert in human emotion, but I'd say that damn well counts as something, Kyubi said with a seri house expression. Naruto sighed and looked away, his mind still a jumble from this experience. Try kissing her, Kyubi offered, to which Naruto nearly choked. Kiss her? Naruto asked in surprise. Yeah, that's what I think you humans call it, Kyubi said, looking down in concentration. If you don't remember, my first kiss wasn't the most ideal thing in the world, Naruto said with a sickened expression on his face. Kid, what would you have done had it happened now, and had it been that Hyuga girl? Kyubi asked as he looked at Naruto with a raised eyebrow. Naruto thought, then his face turned dark red in embarrassment. Kyubi laughed at Naruto's position but calmed himself quickly and said, all I'm saying is, how are you going to know? I know you're really confused right now. I'm in your head, so it's all I hear all day. You just gotta go with instinct on this one. I know you can at least do that well. Naruto sighed and nodded. This could either be the biggest mistake of his life, or this could make his entire existence. Right now he was happy to have her by his side, but he was hoping when he attempted a kiss she wouldn't pull away. He was hoping that he could live up to his promises. Alright, Kyubi-sensei. Even though it's probably not the best advice, I'll take it, Naruto said, causing the demon fox to smirk. Damn straight. Now get up, kid. I think it's time for your little lesson from the Hyuga guy, Kyubi said as Naruto felt himself slowly drift from the world of dreams. Naruto woke up, got dressed in his fighting attire, and left quickly for the training grounds. Naruto arrived just in time to see Hiashi sitting on the ground, his legs crossed and his eyes closed in a type of meditation. Ah, Naruto, you finally woke up, Hiashi said as he opened his eyes and stood up. Naruto yawned and nodded. Yeah, I'm awake, Hiashi-sama. Sorry, but I had a few things to work out with. Yeah, anyway, what am I learning today? Hiashi shook his head at Naruto's attempt to escape mentioning Kyubi, but he let it slide. For all of the attacks the Hyuga clan uses, one needs perfect chakra control with all of their tenketsu. They must know how to bend their chakra to their will under any circumstances. Hiashi walked up to a tree and pulled a rope, releasing 4 planks of wood from the high branches. The planks were arranged so a person could fit in between all of them comfortably. You have to hit these planks of wood hard enough to break them into pieces, Hiashi said with a solemn expression. Naruto smirked. That's it. Easy. Without your hands, feet, or tails, Hiashi finished, causing Naruto to blanch. What? Naruto asked in confusion. To gain a perfect sense of chakra control, you must be able to release chakra from all of your tenketsu points in sync. You have to break these boards that surround your body without the use of your physical form. You only have your chakra to use, and no lightning or fire, Hiashi said, noticing Naruto getting an idea. Naruto groaned. Fine, Hiashi-sama. After I break the boards, what will I have to do? Hiashi smirked as Naruto got into the center of the boards. You'll find that out when you break the boards. Now get to work. Naruto sighed and concentrated. He felt the chakra building up and collecting at all of the tenketsu points along his body. In an instant he released it, sending a wave of chakra from his body. The wave made contact with the wooden planks to his front and his right, but they were only blown back slightly. Damn, Naruto thought as he began to gather his chakra once again. This time he gathered more chakra and began focusing it on his back and more to his left. He let the chakra go in a large wave, but as before, all that happened were the planks at his back and left moved, and even then only slightly. Oh damn it, Naruto muttered. He continued this, experimenting with the amount and direction of his chakra waves, but he never got all the planks to move with the same force at the same time. Naruto, try focusing the chakra at your center, then slowly release it in a small wave, Hiashi offered as he watched his student inside the plank prison. Naruto nodded and took a deep breath and concentrated his chakra in his center. He slowly released the chakra, feeling how it moved through his entire body, then out all of his tenketsu points to cause all of the planks to move as if they were touched by the wind. Naruto smirked as he memorized the feel of the chakra flowing through his system. Eventually he began to add more and more chakra to the waves. Slowly the planks began moving more and more. They went from blowing in a soft wind to blowing in a harsh gale, but not matter what, Naruto couldn't break them. Naruto shut his chakra circulation and the planks returned to lying at his sides. Now that you have how the chakra circulates memorized, try to send it out in short bursts rather than a constant flow. Like a violent explosion rather than soft rolling waves, Hiashi counseled. Naruto was feeling a bit weary at the amount of chakra this training was taking, but in Naruto-esque fashion he threw caution to the wind. He swiftly gathered a large amount of chakra to his center and in a quick burst he sent it out, causing the planks to fly and a deep dent to appear in all of them. Naruto looked around and thought, so close. Single quote. Naruto took a deep breath and concentrated his chakra into his center once again. He continued to gather his chakra until he was sure he had enough to at least crack the boards. He released it in a great burst, and with that the planks not only broke but they splintered out of existence. Naruto smirked in accomplishment and would have cheered his success if he hadn't already been a bit lightheaded from all his chakra usage. Very good, Naruto. I'd say that is enough for today, Hiashi said as he turned briskly and headed for the main house. What about tomorrow, Hiashi-sama? Naruto questioned as he watched the Hyuga leader depart. Same time, same place, Naruto, Hiashi said as he disappeared down the path for the main house. Naruto yawned and looked to the sky. It only looked like it was late afternoon. That was good because he still needed to round up a team for the Chunin exams. He thought of recruiting Sasuke, but he found that Sasuke had already found a team where one of their members had just up and quit being a ninja. Naruto was kind of angry but shook it off. Here he was looking at 6 scrolls, determining which would be the best on his team. Okay, where were those guys that I saw the other day? Naruto muttered as he sat looking at the scrolls in front of him. Ah, here we go. Good potential and power for a long-term genin. Hey, I see, only takes the exams that are held in the village, Naruto mused as he looked at the scroll to his left. And this one, he's a fire jutsu specialist. Wonderful, we have a human pyro and a kitsune, Naruto said with a smirk. Their lucky day, Kyuubi laughed inside Naruto's head, causing the fox boy to laugh to himself. Hey, isn't today the day that Hyuga girl coming back from her mission? Mentioned Kyuubi. Yeah, but they shouldn't get back until. Oh crap, Naruto thought, which caused him to quickly roll his scrolls up and look to the quickly darkening sky. He raced off to the front gates of the village. They should be getting back any second. Kiba let out an exhausted breath as the village gates came into view. Thank fricking God. Why did we take this mission? It was boring as hell. Kiba ranted just like he always does. Why are you complaining? You didn't have to walk, came Shino's solemn reply. It was true, Kiba barely had to walk a step since he relied on Akamaru. Whatever, Kiba said as he dismounted Akamaru and began walking, just to prove a point. Kiba stretched and in the process got a look over his shoulder to see the quiet girl of the team as quiet as ever. However, she wasn't looking at the ground as usual, and if he didn't know better he could have sworn she looked excited. Kiba smirked and shook his head as he turned his eyes back to the road. Hinata seemed really happy ever since Naruto moved into her home. A few days after the attack, Shino, Akamaru, and himself visited the Hyuga mansion to make sure their friend and teammate was okay. When Naruto answered the door in his new half-human form, they were pretty much thrown for a loop. Hell, Kiba and Akamaru damn near attacked him until they recognized his scent. Naruto explained everything that happened and left them at the door to get Hinata. Holy shit, Kiba said, that's Naruto. It would appear so, Shino said with a raised eyebrow, the only thing showing his confusion. Hinata must have a hell of a time around him now. Kiba muttered as the door to the mansion suddenly clicked and opened, revealing Hinata and Naruto side by side. Kiba-kun, Shino-kun, Akamaru-kun, hello, Hinata said, a stutter absent from her voice. Kiba blinked a few times and said, wait a minute, this can't be Hinata. Both Hinata and Naruto stared at Kiba. Every time Hinata is within 10 feet of Naruto she stutters, Kiba said with a suspicious look. Hinata blushed and softly said, I guess Naruto-kun is rubbing off on me. Kiba smiled to himself as he remembered the teasing he gave Hinata and the flare in Naruto's temper that almost left him with his pants on fire. Now where was he? Oh yeah, they were at the entrance to the village. Finally we're home, time for a cheese hamburger, how about you Akamaru? Ready for some of my dog food? Kiba asked, that caused Akamaru to bark in excitement. I must be going, goodbye, Shino said and turned towards his home. Only Shino could get away with something so seemingly rude, but Kiba and Hinata accepted it. With anyone else he wouldn't even say goodbye. Kiba looked around expecting to see that insane grin of Naruto's, but he didn't see anyone except an anxious-looking Hinata. Kiba stretched and said, well, I'm going home. See y'all later Hinata, and don't worry, the idiot'll be around sometime. Quote. With those words said, Kiba and Akamaru left to grab something to eat, leaving Hinata to wait by the front gate of the village. Hinata looked around but didn't see a flash of golden fur that signaled the entrance of the number 1 unpredictable ninja of Konoha. Hinata activated her Byakugan and scouted the village for the elusive streak of gold but saw nothing. She did notice the Foxy fan club but shoved that in the back of her mind, not wanting to look angry should Naruto appear out of nowhere like he sometimes did. Hinata deactivated the Dujutsu and began the walk home until her eyes were covered by 2 hands. Guess who? Came a voice she knew at once. Hello Naruto-kun, Hinata said with a smile. How was the mission? Naruto asked as he removed his hands and began walking with Hinata home. It was interesting, Hinata said with a small smile. Nowhere near as interesting as you Naruto-kun. Hinata thought with a small blush on her cheeks. Naruto laughed. In other words, it was boring, huh? I heard Kiba all the way at the Hyuga mansion. Kiba-kun yelled that loud. Hinata asked. She was never too sure how loud Kiba was sometimes. She had been on his team with Shino so long she just didn't notice anymore. Naruto smirked and grabbed the lobes of his ears in his wild golden hair. With these things I could hear a pin drop in the middle of Konoha, he said with a light laugh. Naruto walked Hinata home to the main house, neither a word said between them, both of them just enjoying the silence and the knowledge that the other was there. While they accented the steps of the main house to the front door, Naruto stopped few steps from the top and grabbed Hinata's hand before she reached the top step. Hey, Hinata-chan, Naruto said softly with a smile. Hinata was stunned but turned to him, looking directly into his blue and golden eyes, almost falling into the Kitsune's seduction spell. I'm entering the coming Chunin exams, Naruto said bluntly. This took Hinata a while to register, and when she did she responded with mixed joy and worry. Naruto-kun, you know you can get killed. Hinata said, which caused Naruto to blink a few times in confusion. Naruto's eyes then turned serious but in some sense caring too. Hinata-chan, I said that I'd protect you. I swore on my blood and Kitsune honor that I would, Naruto said in a soft and comforting voice. I won't die and leave you unguarded. I swear it, Naruto said, trailing off at the end. Come on kid, do it. Kyuubi whispered in Naruto's mind. You know you have to. Do it, kiss her. Quote. Kyuubi continued to whisper, hoping to get this drama to an end. Naruto's heart sped, his mind was swimming, he had no idea what to do. Hinata was standing there, looking at him with a hopeful look in her eyes, and he was lost. Instinct suddenly failed him and he couldn't follow his Ian's old teacher's advice. Naruto sighed and let Hinata's hand slide from his own as he slowly turned. Good night Hinata-chan. Good night, Naruto-kun. Quote. Hinata said sadly as she watched Naruto leave for the branch house grounds. She knew what opportunity had just arisen, and it had been horribly wasted. She gave a deep sigh into the darkness of the night and entered the mansion, unable to feel the twin streaks of tears that streamed from her eyes. As she walked the halls to her room, she heard the rain began to fall and the thunder roar. Naruto lay on his bed, listening to the faint sounds of rolling thunder along the night sky, hearing the soft pitter-patter of the rain as it landed upon the roof. He missed it. He had just completely missed it. "Kid, you are an idiot," came a scowling call from deep inside his subconscious. "Shut up," Naruto said, sending the demon's voice deep into the unreachable recesses of his mind. "I blew it," he muttered to himself as he turned in his bed, knowing full well that he wasn't going to get any sleep tonight. When the morning had finally had come, Naruto was about as close to sleep as he had been when he fell onto the bed several hours ago. His blue and gold eyes stared up at the ceiling, a familiar splashing sound alerting him that it was indeed still raining. He sighed and sat up from his bed, knowing it had to be about 4 or 5 in the morning at the latest. "I blew it," he muttered to himself, quiet enough to avoid waking his slumbering roommate. His stomach roared and he began the long and probably soaking wet path to the kitchen. Even if the cook wasn't awake at those hours of the morning, he knew how to cook ramen. He sighed as he opened the front door of the branch house. Even if he used the branch house entrance, it could take him a good 5 minutes of running in the rain to make it. Better get going now. Hinata lay awake on her bed, her eyes were bloodshot from her own crying. She almost had him, then she let him slip away. Her eyes would have started their watering routine all over again, but they were dry. She had no more tears to cry. Hinata lay curled up in her bed until she felt her mouth had gone dry and she was in desperate need of a drink of water. She sat up on her bed, trying to get her bearings in the dark room. To see better, she quietly activated her bloodline limit, but she saw something that made her eyes cry the dry tears once again. She looked through the walls of the main house to the grounds below her window and she saw what had to be Naruto, standing and looking at her window. He stood there for a few moments before hanging his head, then disappearing in a golden blur. Hinata retracted the telescopic vision of her Byakugan and rose from her bed. She had seen where the blur was headed. It was going right for the main house kitchen. Naruto was running as fast as he could on the slippery grass of the early morning. His clothes were near soaking wet and his bare feet were quickly losing traction on the wet ground. It didn't help that there was rain pouring into his eyes every second, but he could get past that with his Sekagen. Naruto looked up at the main house mansion and found he was just below a very familiar window. His running steps stopped and his Sekagen faded, leaving him standing in the rain, looking up at the window of Hinata's room. He stood there, his mind asking all sorts of questions. Should I go up there? Is she asleep? Is she awake like me? What should I do? Naruto thought before hanging his head. He knew she was asleep, he knew he had messed up, he knew he had to leave. His Sekagen activated and like that he disappeared into the early morning rain, sprinting for the main house kitchen. Naruto quickly and quietly opened the door to the kitchen, slipping inside before any of the branch house guards saw him and suspect the worst. Naruto looked about the large kitchen and resolved that he was going to make himself something to get this growling from his stomach. He began to look all over the kitchen, but no matter where he looked he didn't find a speck of food. Where the hell is all the food? All I found is cookware, Naruto grumbled mentally. Naruto-kun, whispered a voice outside his little mental circle, and from the volume and the slight stutter he knew who it was. Hinata-chan, he asked as he turned to have his fox eyes land upon the form of a girl. She was standing in the doorway that led from the kitchen into the hallway. His sharpened eyes looked through the darkness and saw that she had deep circles under her eyes and her pale violet PRLS had been tinted with a reddish tone. She had been crying, and it was his fault. Might want to use the pantry, Naruto-kun. Hinata said softly and sadly. Naruto looked down for a moment in shame. He had made her cry and it tore his heart to pieces. He looked back up into Hinata's bloodshot eyes, feeling unworthy under their gaze, and replied, "Sure, where is it?" Hinata led Naruto to the pantry, which luckily was right next door to the kitchen. Here it is, Naruto-kun. Quote. Hinata said, opening the door to the variable mountain of food stored inside. Naruto, on the other hand, was thinking, she still calls me Naruto-kun. Thank you, Hinata-chan, Naruto said before Hinata interrupted him. Why are you up so early, Naruto-kun? She asked, causing Naruto to think quick. I woke up hungry, Naruto said softly. Hinata had been around Naruto enough to know when he was lying, and right now her mind felt something was wrong. Her mind thought of the best way to help this situation less tense. She knew Naruto was as uncomfortable as she was at this moment. Naruto-kun, what would you like for breakfast? She asked as Naruto looked into the pantry. I was just thinking about ramen, but all this food kinda makes me more hungry, Naruto said honestly. Hinata couldn't help but smile at the obvious Naruto answer. But what do you want, Naruto-kun? Hinata asked again. Well, ramen obviously, Naruto said with a slight smile. Of all the foods he knew, ramen had to be at the top. Okay, our ramen it is, Hinata said as she grabbed the ingredients for ramen plus a few other things and walked from the pantry to the kitchen. Naruto followed, curious as to what she was doing until he saw her begin to cook the items. Wait, Hinata-chan, you don't have to. Naruto began, but Hinata interrupted with a soft, it's no problem, Naruto-kun. Besides, I'm hungry too. As Hinata began to cook, Naruto couldn't help but remember what he had said so long ago. Hinata, this is awesome. You know you'd make a good wife someday. Naruto remembered saying that in hell he had meant it. Those rice balls were excellent, even if they did look kind of weird. All the food Hinata made tasted especially excellent to him. He never understood why, but as he watched her cook the ramen and at the same time prepare a few rice balls, he began to understand. She put her heart into her work. It wasn't a job, it wasn't a chore, it was something she wanted to do. Naruto smiled faintly as she quickly finished her work and set out 2 bowls of ramen and a couple of rice balls between them. She swiftly cleaned the small mess she had made, then took a seat at the counter on the opposite side of Naruto. Enjoy, Hinata said softly as she began to eat her meager portion of ramen. Hinata-chan, Naruto asked, causing Hinata to look up at him with questioning eyes. Why did you do this? He asked in confusion. Hinata's lips turned up in a soft smile and said, because I wanted to, Naruto-kun. Naruto produced his own smile and said, thank you. Quote. Like the many times before, they ate in silence, the feeling of tension gone in their minds as they just enjoyed each other's presence. The whole morning it had rained and thunderstormed, but that didn't mean Hiashi allowed Naruto to take a day off. He had spent the day training by using his chakra in a mix of short bursts and even waves to keep the water from his body. When the rain had ended, Hiashi deemed the training for the day through. By the end of it all, Naruto was pretty spent, but he was damned if he was going to waste another day without finding his team. He bid Hinata a farewell and rushed into the cloudy weather to find his new team. Naruto had read both of their profiles and decided that this was his best bet at a functional and powerful team. In his mind, he was still gonna be the top dog, or fox of the group, but he wanted the best team available. He ran for the training fields, knowing that since the rains had stopped, their sensei would have them training. Hey Zayaku, said a girl, her clothes and figure giving any perverted male able to see a good bloody nose and bad thoughts. She wore deep red and white pants with one leg cropped short and white sandals on her feet with fishnet leggings covering the open space between her pants and sandals. On her pant loop was a scroll, but if a skilled ninja looked carefully, one could see it was just a very well done hinge. She wore a white short sleeve jacket with a dark red tank top shirt beneath. Her hands danced over the scroll on her pant loop like she was just itching to reveal its true purpose. Her eyes were a bright green that complemented her orangish red hair perfectly. On her forehead she wore the symbol of Konohagakure, and despite the fact that her hair was not as long as most kunoichi of her age, it still covered a good deal of the headband. You hear about that guy that's supposed to join our team for the Chunin exams? She asked as she turned to her partner. He was leaning against a tree and on his back was a large object wrapped in black bandages. He wore a high-collared black shirt with silver clasps and baggy dark gray pants. Around his waist was an old and partially shredded black warrior's skirt. On the front flap was symbols for Sichi embroidered in silver. On his arms and legs were bandages covering every inch of open skin except his hands, which were a pair of black leather steel plate gloves. He wore black sandals on his feet, and around his neck, just below his high collar, was a scarf of dark silver coloration and the Kanahagakure engraved plate. His long hair was silver at its base, but toward the end it grew dark and blackened. It was all pulled back into a fine tail except for a few clumps that shadowed his eyes. If one were to look past the shadows, they would be able to see his oddly colored eyes, both of them a spotless sea of gold. Yeah, I did, the genin named Zayaku replied with a smirk. Anything's better than the last one, Atami. Atami nodded in agreement with Zayaku, then placed a scroll she had at her waist to her lips and looked like she took a drink. I am not lugging you home again, Zayaku said, which earned a scowl from Atami. I'm fine, you idiot, she growled as she turned and was met with the sight of a golden fox boy standing before her. Okay, maybe I am a little tipsy, she said, shaking her head and blinking her eyes. Zayaku's eyes went a little wider. I think those fumes of yours are getting to me. Hey, are you guys the team I'm supposed to join? Naruto asked as he approached the team, but apparently they didn't hear them. Hell, they were still quite a ways away. As he walked towards them, he sized them up in his mind. Well, the girl looks like something Ero Sanin would like. But I can smell something really bad from here, and I can tell it's coming from her. If I didn't know better, I could swear it was Sake. Naruto thought as he shivered. He hated the stuff. It always messed with his mind. The other guy, he looks kind dark. He reminds me a lot of like a cross between Shino and Sasuke. That thing on his back brings back memories, Naruto thought as he smirked and remembered the cage of the sand, Gaara, and he scowled thinking of Kisame of the Mist. Just as he entered speaking distance, the girl turned to face him, then muttered something he didn't get in the least. Are you the team that's missing one person for the Chunin exams? Naruto asked again. He hated doing that, but they looked like statues. Yeah, we are, Zayaku said as he pushed himself off the tree, shaking off the initial shock from Naruto's appearance. After all, many would say that his eyes were unnatural, but that was what clan inheritance is. What's your name? Asked the girl this time. Naruto knew it. The smell was coming from her, and it was Sake. That's why she was having such an easy time with this. She was probably half drunk. Before he could comment, there was a puff of smoke, and out of the smoke stepped a Junin. He wore the Junin flak jacket with traditional black ninja pants on his legs with bandages around the exposed part of his legs. However, under his vest it looked like he wore nothing, and from the looks of it he paid. His arms and his legs were scarred to hell. There were burn marks, slicing scars, friction scars, everything. On his feet he wore blue sandals, and on his waist he wore a leather wineskin. His longer dark hair was slicked back under his cap-like headband, and his face looked almost friendly. He had a large scar going from the bottom of his right eye stretching over his face to his chin. His deep brown eyes were scrunched up in a smile, and he said, "Hey. I see you guys met." His replacement. Quote. Zayaku and Atami nodded while Naruto just stared. He hadn't seen this Junin in the village. Ever. Well, he never saw Zayaku or Atami, but still, he would have noticed this guy. He looked pretty memorable. Sorry, I never got your name, the Junin said with a smile. Apparently this guy didn't mind that Naruto looked like a fox. Naruto, Uzumaki Naruto, Naruto replied, to which the Junin continued to smile. Nice to have you aboard, Naruto. Since we have a new member, how about we introduce ourselves? The Junin said with an excited attitude. I'll begin. My name is Taisho. I like the rush and excitement you get from a mission, especially be in a class. I don't like the downtime from mission to mission. Yeah, that's me. Let's have Zayaku next. Teisho said with a smile and a snap of his fingers. Zayaku rolled his eyes. Fine. My name is Onigiri Zayaku. I like money among other things. I don't like wasting money, among other things, and drunks. At that comment Zayaku smirked while Atami sneered at him. I'm done, Zayaku said with a bored tone. Coin lover, my name is Izumo Atami. I like things, Atami said as her eyes shifted left and right. Zayaku and Teisho both rolled their eyes, but Naruto was clueless to this happening. I don't like things in the aftermath of other things. And idiots who can't keep their smart comments to their self, Atami finished with a glare to Zayaku. Naruto smirked and said loud and proud, my name is Uzumaki Naruto and I like ramen, pranks, and ... I don't like the 3-minute wait for ramen, people who judge other people unfairly, people who beat themselves up over nothing, and people who spread rumors of other people. Naruto skipped a certain person in the speech of what he liked. He'd rather keep his love interests to himself. Well, it seems that you are all ready for the exam, but first. Teisho said as he held up his hand and snapped his fingers with such a crack that Naruto flinched. He had never heard such a loud snap from someone, hell he had never heard something like it anywhere. Let's have our own little test right here and now, Teisho said with a hearty laugh. Oh great, Atami said with a roll of her eyes. Oh come on, it can't be that bad, Naruto said remembering the bell's test with Kakashi. Oh but it can Naruto, Taishi said with a great smile. Oh, I had to deal with Kakashi-sensei's stupid bell test, I can beat this no problem, Naruto said confidently. Naruto, Taishi-sensei isn't from Konoha. He defected, Zayaku said as he put his hands in his pockets. So that's why I've never seen you before. Where are you from? Naruto asked, not the least bit scared of the grinning Junin. Taishi laughed his hearty laugh again, then grinned and said, I'm from the Sound. Naruto would have damn near killed the Junin if he had been able to get his hand on him, but as it was, the Junin had just a small upper hand on Naruto. Before any of them had even seen Teisho, he had made several shadow clones, that way if Naruto attacked him he wouldn't harm the real Teisho. Naruto, you have to calm down, Zayaku said to the nearly rabid fox boy. How can I? He's from the Sound, growled Naruto like a feral dog. He used to be from the Sound, Atami corrected. It's true Naruto, came Teisho's voice from behind Naruto. Naruto swung but Teisho just barely dodged backward. Technically I am from Mist, but I defected to the Sound, Teisho said with a serious face as he barely avoided yet another attack. A double traitor, Naruto yelled, the edges of his golden eyes glowing, signaling the ignition of his Sekkagen. Teisho had heard about this from the Hokage when she warned him about Naruto. It was something he didn't want to mess with. He quickly raised his hand and snapped his fingers, causing a large crack of sound. Naruto was confused as he watched the fingers in slow motion as to what this could accomplish. When he watched carefully, he saw that it was a cover, a mere distraction by making his ears hurt by the violent vibrations. Naruto quickly blocked off his own ears with his hands and the great cracking sound passed him, but this left a window open long enough for Teisho to form hand seals and open his wine skin. After he completed his seals, he put his hand over the mouth of the wine skin and from deep within the pouch a stream of water that formed a ball in his hand. Teisho smirked and tossed the ball towards Naruto, who dodged it easily. This is a sound mist Junin. A joke, Naruto thought as he resumed his attack. He completely missed the ball of water, slowing then hovering mid-air, its circular spinning form floating as if waiting for something. Oh crap, Atami said as she started to run. I got it covered, Zayaku said as his hands formed several seals in quick procession. Besides, I wouldn't want to miss this little show for the world. In an instant his chakra flared and his jutsu began. Teisho merely laughed his loud hearty laugh and formed another hand seal. Suddenly the entire area was covered in a mist, leaving everything clouded in the thick fog. Naruto's eyes widened in surprise, but it wasn't what he couldn't see what made him surprised. It was what he could see. The thick fog seemed to be nothing to his Sekage, but in his amazement he had lost Taisho. Suddenly he heard a loud snap of fingers followed by a loud explosion. Naruto turned to see a massive wave of blade-like water flying towards him. That ball of water wasn't a distraction, it was an attack. Naruto slowed the world down with his Sekage and just slid below the blade of water, feeling it pass over him with a great gust of wind. Naruto sprung up and returned the world to normal, deactivating the Sekage. Very good Naruto, came Taisho's voice from all angles. I see you'll have no problem passing the Chunin exams. Naruto turned in circles, probably something that traitor learned in sound. Come out and fight, you traitor, growled Naruto as the mist slowly dispersed. When the land was clear, Naruto turned and saw Taisho standing with a wide smile on his face and his hands in the formation of a seal. Traitor, Naruto growled as he took a step forward, forgetting to take caution from the presented hand seal. Taisho lifted his head to the sky, and in an instant the entire clearing was rocked with a massive sound, like a water drum had been played into 500 consecutive megaphones. The ground shook and split from the deep and loud sound that carved a swath of destruction with incredibly loud bass sounds. Naruto had to hold his ears and avoid the fissures at the same time, but slowly the training he had earlier in the day and not sleeping all night caught up with him and he stumbled. Using his hands for balance, his ears caught the full force of the deep bass sound and it made him dizzy to listen to. It felt like his entire head was being tossed inside of a spinning barrel that was going off a waterfall. Naruto was forced to his knee and suddenly the sound stopped. Naruto looked up at Taisho, who was smiling same as ever, and he said, "You passed the test, Naruto." "What the hell do you mean?" Naruto asked, having a hard time standing. Taisho laughed and said, "You see, each genin team I signed, a sort of speciality. There are trackers, there are planners, there are general teams." Quote. Naruto thought back to his days with Team 7. Definitely a general team. And of course you have the teams like ours. Taisho smiled as he gestured to the far side of the field. Naruto turned his head to look, and what he saw completely surprised him. As far as he could tell, it was a massive orb shield, and it looked like it was made of metal. Naruto watched as the orb came closer, and just when it was about 2 yards from Naruto, it broke into thousands and thousands of coins. The coins looked to be from all ages of time, some from the ancient days of the Fire Country, some brand new and off the mold. As the shield dispersed, he watched Atami and Zayaku appear from inside the orb. The coins flew straight for Zayaku, but instead of harming him, they simply slid into the bandages in his arms and legs and all over the rest of his body and disappeared. Zayaku smirked at Naruto's open-mouthed gawking. It felt good to have that kind of shock and awe from someone as powerful as him. "I said I liked money," Zayaku said as Atami smirked and added, "Don't you mean love to the point of marriage?" Zayaku glared at Atami from the corner of his eye but said nothing. "We're a shield team," Taisho finally finished. Naruto blinked in confusion. With names like theirs, he suspected they were the offense. "We head up the first wave of any attack and take out the enemy scouts and anyone else we run into," Taisho said with a smile. "Gives you the shivers of excitement, doesn't it?" Quote. "Whatever, sensei, as long as you don't say that one thing." Atami grumbled. "Oh, you mean?" Taisho began as he held up his hand in a snapping formation. "Oh crap, not again," Atami thought with a scowl. "No, no, no, oh hell no," Zayaku thought with his same stoic look on his face. Naruto was confused beyond all reason. What the hell was going on? "Snaptastic," Taisho said with a snap of his fingers, then a thumbs up with a hearty laugh. Everyone, even Naruto, had a sweat drop on their heads. That was just too lame of a line. It sounded like something Guy and Lee would say. "Never say that again," Atami said with her head in her hands. "That's embarrassing," Zayaku said with a shake of his head. "I think that line is too lame even for Guy and Lee," Naruto muttered. Taisho shook off the negative comments and said, "Well, that's it for the day's training. You are free to do anything you want." "You're only saying that 'cause it's getting dark," Atami said with a scowl. Taisho smiled and said, Think what you want. He snapped his fingers and like that he vanished in a puff of smoke. Well, that was entertaining. Quote. Naruto said, sarcasm dripping from his voice. Apparently, you haven't gotten up yet. Atami said with a smirk as she took another drink from her scroll. I've been meaning to ask you about that. Quote. Naruto said with a glare. About what? Atami asked. Innocently, as she put the scroll back onto her belt. You're not 21. You shouldn't drink sake. It's sick. It messes you up for life. Why drink it? Naruto screamed. Zayaku then showed the most expression he had all day. His eyes snapped open in surprise and he slowly inched his way away from a shaking Atami. You wanna know? Atami growled with such fury that Naruto began to feel sorry for asking the question. I drink 'cause I fricking have to. Why can't you get it, you low down, bastard golden boy? You think you're so high and mighty, but hell, this is the only thing keeping me from not killing each and every one of you idiots. Atami screamed at the top of her lungs, causing Naruto to watch wide-eyed and severely afraid. If you ever bitch to me again about this, I'll make sure you don't have kids. With that, Atami stormed off, taking another deep swig from her scroll. Single quote. Zayaku walked over to the obviously freaked out and frozen Naruto still on his knee. He crouched down to Naruto's level and said, "That's why I never ask anymore." Zayaku stood and left, most likely after the nuclear-tempered Atami. It took Naruto a good 15 minutes to get back into movement. God, I'm just not having much luck with females. Speaking of which, Naruto thought as he began walking toward the Hyuga clan grounds. The storm clouds began to gather once again and he didn't want to be stuck in the rain. Despite his fatigue, he made it to the main house mansion just before the clouds broke and it began to pour. He supposed he could go see how Hinata was doing before he rushed home to the branch house. Suddenly he heard a soft and sultry, "Kitsune-kun," sound from behind him. He turned to find that it was a branch house girl, someone he had never seen before. She wore the normal servant uniform that all the branch house women wore, but it seemed far more open in the chest area the most. Naruto blinked a few times, having this register in his mind before shaking his head back into reality. Hello? Naruto asked as the branch house girl walked up to him, a seductive sway in her step. I've been watching you, Kitsune-kun, the woman said with a slight seductive tone that left Naruto just a little bit uncomfortable. The woman walked around Naruto, brushing against him every so often in places he felt violated in. Had he not been so exhausted, he would have called her for violation, but as of now he just backed away the best he could, slowly backing himself into a wall. The woman closed in on him, quickly wrapping her arms around his neck and forcefully drawing him to her. His eyes dropped and closed, his body too exhausted from the day of rigorous training and fights to keep them open. Hinata knew something was amiss, she could feel it. Maybe it was because that she broke her comb this morning while brushing her hair. Maybe it was finding her rice bowl for lunch had the chopsticks in it standing straight up. Or maybe it was because she didn't get enough sleep the night before. Whatever the case was, she felt something was off and she deemed it her duty to find out what it was. She was lucky to not have a mission today, or it would be pure murder on her in her sleep-deprived state. First she checked the house grounds. Finding nothing, she decided to meditate upon the problem in her room. As she passed the front door, she saw something truly terrible. There was that branch girl, Hitoko, her arms and legs like an octopus on her Naruto-kun. Then she saw something that made it 1,000 times worse. The branch house girl actually pulled Naruto to her and planted a kiss, right on his lips. At that, Hinata's heart sank. She watched as Hitoko passionately kissed her Naruto-kun. Hinata looked to Naruto's eyes, finding them closed and seemingly off in a different world. Hinata's temper raged, but then her eyes began to tear and she walked back into the hallway from where she came. She knew the seal, she knew how to make that girl pay. She couldn't do it, she couldn't rush in there. It was painful enough to rush in thinking Naruto was in peril. It was something different if she found out Naruto was enjoying it. Hinata pulled her knees up to her chest, and she cried into her knees to muffle the sound. She didn't want to disturb the kissing couple. Hitoko smirked as she released Naruto's lips from her own. Her plan had worked. She saw it all with the Byakugan. She knew Naruto and Hinata had this little infatuation with each other which caused him to live in the branch home, but she never liked the fox boy. To be honest, she hated him ever since the attack on Konoha so many years ago. Now that he was the fox, it was only a matter of time for him to return to the ways of the Kyuubi. He was a bad omen and a curse upon the house. All she needed to do was plant the right traps and choose the right moments. The fox would be gone. Later, "You dirty fox," she muttered as she propped him up on a chair and turned to leave, purposely walking right past Hinata with a smug smirk on her face. Oh yes, the fox was as good a gone. End chapter. Naruto lay on his bed, his mind hazed and confused beyond all reason. What had just happened left him beyond anyone's mental span. Hell, even Shikamaru wouldn't have a clue as to how to fix this. Naruto awoke with a start to find himself sitting in a chair by the front entrance of the Hyuga mansion. Thank God, all that about the branch girl kissing him must have been some really weird and creepy nightmare. He was about to go, but then his ears picked up a soft sound. It made his heart wrench the second he recognized the soft voice emitting it. Hinata-chan. Naruto thought as he used all of his remaining kitsune speed to find the Hyuga heiress. He didn't have to look far because she was relatively close. All he had to do was follow the sounds of sobbing and the smell of salty tears. Hinata sat in the hallway, fairly certain that her heart was completely demolished, crying, knowing nothing else to do in this situation that pained her so. Hinata-chan. She heard outside her little orb of sadness and pain. It could only be one person in the home that called her Chan with such a tone of voice. Her voice failed her and all she could say were heaving sobs. Hinata clutched herself tighter into a ball and resigned that she wouldn't come out and ruin Naruto's little moment with Hitoko. Hinata-chan. What's wrong? Naruto asked, still bothering her, even taking the initiative to embrace her in his tales for comfort. She couldn't find comfort in them. They are meant for another, not her. She came out of her ball in a burst and took off in a run down the hall, leaving Naruto in her dust. Naruto now lay on his bed, running over what the hell had just happened to mess with his mind so much. First he asked Hinata-chan what was wrong, then he tries to comfort her, then she pushes him away and runs. It's an average situation for him, but he never thought Hinata-chan would do that unless. Naruto's mind almost snapped in realization. This was probably the worst thing that could have happened to him. Hinata must have found out about Kyuubi and she hated him just like all the others. Naruto felt like curling up in a ball and crying, but he wouldn't allow himself to. All he did was turn over in his bed, cover himself with his sheets, and silently shed his painful tears. Hinata had to run. She couldn't face Naruto like that, especially after he found her. Hinata carefully dodged all of the branch house servants and rushed to her room, closing the door in a haste and locking it. Her heart was in shambles and there was no one to help her pick up the pieces. As the darkness flooded the village, she fell asleep in her own tear-soaked pillow. Naruto awoke in his world of dreams inside the corridor of the seal. Naruto called out Kyuubi's name, but as he approached the cage he found a small card hanging on the bars. Urgent meditation business. Be back later. Naruto blinked. Since when did the fox call a day off from nightly training? Naruto shrugged and his form faded from the seal world, his back turned to the blood-red eyes that watched him carefully. You have to experience this, kid. Only way it'll get fixed. The morning came without last night's rain and both Naruto and Hinata were tired. They both had fairly fitful nights of sleep, each with their own torrent of nightmares and mental anguish. As they went for breakfast they both hoped the other was not there so they wouldn't cross paths. Neither of them arrived at the same time, but to them it was a mixed feeling. They were happy the other wasn't there but sad at the same time. Hinata had an early morning mission and Naruto was busy with training from Hiyashi-sama, so they didn't see each other in the early morning. Hinata had a simple tracking mission with her old team so she wouldn't be gone for a very long time, most likely just for the day. She left the home with a pang of pain just as she saw Hitoko watching her, a smug smirk on her features that made Hinata's hand twitch in anticipation for use of the G'd bird seal. She gathered together her composure and left the home without so much as a word to the smug-looking branch female. Hiyashi had decided to step up Naruto's training and made him focus his chakra into 3 kunai that were balanced on the tip of his nose. He had to have the exact amount of chakra or it would slice off his nose or stab his eye. Naruto concluded his training and set off to meet his new team for even more training. He still had a long day ahead of him. Naruto, no offense but you look like hell. And this is coming from me, Atami said as she saw the fox boy enter the training grounds. I had a long day, Naruto said as he began to stretch. Naruto spotted Zayaku with his back to a tree and his golden eyes staring out into nothingness. Apparently he was in a thinking mood and that meant a large sign saying, "Do not disturb," hung from his neck. Naruto completed his stretching just in time to see the snapping arrival of their Junin sensei. Hey, how's everyone? Holy crap Naruto, you look like hell, Taisho said as he examined the fox boy. That's what I said, Atami said as Zayaku approached the group, his thought process apparently broken by the snap of Taisho. I'm fine, let's just get on with it, Naruto growled, causing them to get off his case. Anyway, Taisho said with his usual smile. I was going to suggest a few things then we'll take it from there. First as basics, there was a groan from the group. Then there would be chakra control. Naruto was the one who groaned the loudest out of the 3 this time. Or we could skip that and have a good old-fashioned spar in training for the upcoming Chunin exams, Taisho said with a wide smile which all 3 agreed. We don't need more training, we need more real fighting, Naruto said with crossed arms. Seriously sensei, we're not going to get any better doing more studying, Atami said with a smirk. I would like to face Naruto, Zayaku spoke from the back of the group. In a split second everyone looked at him in confusion. Taisho nearly burst out laughing. He expected Zayaku and Atami to spar with each other as they always had and he would help train probably the strongest of the 3. He always knew the winner of the Zayaku-Atami fights. As long as Atami didn't get extremely drunk before or during then it was always an even draw but he suspected Zayaku didn't want to severely injure his teammate. Now he requested a match with the powerful Kitsune. This was going to be fun. Okay, I'll grant that request but for now Atami and I will be watching, Taisho said with a great smile as he and Atami hurried to the edge of the soon-to-be battlefield. Naruto looked at Zayaku and shrugged, your funeral. Zayaku smirked and his golden eyes flashed in the sunlight, good luck Naruto. Okay, I will call the winner when I see one. Taisho shouted from the side. Naruto and Zayaku bowed to each other then Naruto took a fighting stance while Zayaku stood like he was open to any attack at any angle. And, go! Taisho shouted and in an instant Naruto vanished in a blur. Zayaku took a deep breath and closed his eyes as he formed a hand seal. Hikaiteki Kanjiki Shikaku, he said as he opened his transformed eyes to the world. His eyes now were completely gold, no white to be shown. In the center of this golden sea was a single cross-shaped black mark that served as the eye's pupil. Zayaku's eyes shot open and he ducked his head right below a powerful punch from Naruto. Twisting quickly Zayaku swung the back of his fist directly at Naruto's abdomen. Naruto smirked knowing that a simple punch wouldn't hurt him so in a moment of arrogance he let it hit him. Now, the heavier and the more solid something is, the more force it accumulates in movement. Take into the equation what Zayaku had under his bandages and other clothes, heavy solid coins. Naruto felt like he was hit by a solid steel hammer, it was like something just below Lee's massive strength. Naruto flew back but landed on his feet and nursed his injured abdomen while Zayaku looked at Naruto, his golden cross-pupil eyes showing mirth in this game. My funeral Naruto? Asked Zayaku with his hands in his pockets. Naruto stood with a smile. I am surprised, I'll give you that. Then Naruto began to wave his tails back and forth. Sorry, but you are going down, Naruto said as he slammed his tails to the ground, sending a powerful electrical attack to Zayaku. Zayaku jumped, then fell to his knees, holding his abdomen in pain. Very clever, Naruto, Zayaku said as he slowly stood holding his stomach. How are you okay after that? Naruto asked in pure confusion. Zayaku declined to answer and merely began to form hand seals. His hands ceased their movement and his eyes met Naruto's. Shichi Zayaku no Jutsu, Teishoku. From his body flew all his coins, and in a flash they formed a beast that looked like it came from neither heaven nor hell. It had a long row of darkened pits across its head, all having a slight faint red glow in them. The beast's mouth, though made of coins, was large and its huge jagged teeth were looking as sharp as razors. The beast's jaw was so large that it had small insect-like legs to carry it, and along the beast's slowly narrowing body was a row of scorpion-like legs. On its tail was another massive mouth, and hanging from both mouths were 3 snake-like tongues, spiked and ready to hook into its prey. It was a disgusting beast and would have been very threatening, had it been bigger than 1 foot tall. Atami and Taisho sat on the sidelines watching this, then burst into a maniacal fit of laughter. Oh God! To Rich! Atami screamed in the middle of her howling laughter. My sides! Taisho yelled through his hearty laughter. Naruto was no better. He was laughing possibly harder than the other two as he rolled on the ground. Zayaku in the meantime twitched in annoyance. Lifting his hand towards Naruto rolling on the ground, the creature swiftly skittered to Naruto's arm and clamped down with its large mouths. Naruto howled in pain. The beast was actually trying to attack him. This only made Atami and Taisho laugh harder as Naruto tried to shake the small monster off. With a short burst of kitsune fire breath, the creature dispersed and the coins vanished into Zayaku's person. I hate you all, Zayaku said with a twitching eye, seeing his beast be so easily dealt with and seeing the small damage it had done to Naruto quickly heal. Not as much as this, Naruto thought as he held his hands together in a hand seal. Naruto activated Sekkagen and in a flash he was behind Zayaku, his fingers at the ready. Kanahagakure Hiden. Taijutsu no Ogi, Senin Garashi. Naruto cried as he thrust his chakra-enhanced fingers into the rectum of Zayaku. For a moment the entire field was silent, not a bird chirped, not a leaf fell, not even the wind blew. Zayaku turned his head slowly, his golden eyes filled with rage and a deep growling rising from his throat. You. Are dead. Naruto smiled sheepishly and laughed nervously. Apparently with all those coins made Zayaku a lot heavier than Naruto had thought. Zayaku turned with a swift kick to Naruto's head, but he missed by just a hair. Naruto took off in a golden blur, but hell, if Zayaku was going to be left with that. Indignation. Zayaku's hands flew into seals, and when he finished he cried, Shinchi Zayaku no Jutsu, Kumenza. Suddenly Zayaku's eyes grew dark and the light around him seemed to bend to the darkness. His chakra flared to levels previously unknown from him. His skin turned dark, his muscles bulged, and the black of his hair took over his previously silver locks, leaving him with an even darker aura of dark chakra. Naruto. He roared as he took off at a speed that could have even rivaled Naruto in his prime Sekkagen stage. Oh crap, Atami said as she rushed off to find the two idiots. Taisho laughed and said, I knew this was going to be fun. He followed Atami as she rushed after the furious Zayaku and the fleeing Naruto. Naruto smiled to himself as he ran, mostly under Sekkagen influence. Nothing could touch him in this state. At least until his chakra ran out, but for him that wasn't much of a concern. Suddenly he felt a very powerful darkness creep up his spine and he turned his head, only to be greeted by the sight of Zayaku in full transformation, hot on his tails. Naruto kicked his fleeing into high gear, even sending Sekkagen into its highest level of activation that he could reach, but it wasn't enough. Zayaku caught up to Naruto and in an instant Naruto felt like he had been clocked with a hammer on his back. He stumbled and in a black flash Zayaku was beside him, kneeing him in the gut to send him flying. As Naruto flew he saw a black blur pass him then hit him with what felt like an anvil. Naruto fell again but felt Zayaku's knee deep in his gut sending him into the air again. "I'll finish you," Zayaku said as he became a blur at Naruto's side. Naruto turned and watched as the dark Zayaku reached back for his black bandaged object only to stop. His eyes that shone brightly with gold and black faded into his original dull gold irises. His skin faded into his normal skin tone, his hair turned its same shade of silver with black on the tips. However, the black tips seemed to be larger than before. His muscles shrunk under his bandages which constricted with the muscles and he turned back into his normal form. Zayaku's eyes became half closed then shut as he fell to the ground in a heap. When Zayaku landed he created a crater similar to what happened when Lee removed his weights from his legs. Naruto was just lucky enough to fall on his feet but that was short-lived and he rolled back on his heels, falling onto his butt when he lost his balance. Naruto blinked a few times then fell on his back in exhaustion, thank God. Whatever Zayaku had just done it really just put his on the line. "You have to be the luckiest person I have ever met, you know that?" asked Taisho as he stood next to Naruto with a smirk. "How so?" Naruto grumbled, his body too exhausted and in pain to keep his eyes open. "You forced Zayaku to use Kuminza, lasted long enough for his time limit to expire, and you avoided it," Taisho said with a laugh. "It? What the hell is it? And what the hell was that jutsu?" Naruto asked in confusion as he just lay there, his body not responding to any move commands. "It is something you don't want to get acquainted with. The jutsu he used was called Kuminza and the other taijutsu he used to beat the hell out of you was called Akari," Taisho said with a serious voice but still a smiling face. "Kuminza takes an offering of Zayaku's life to increase his abilities and chakra by how much Zayaku puts up as an offer. You're lucky he held this one back, then again so is he," Taisho said his smile faltering as he looked to the crater and Atami pulling the unconscious ninja from its center. "It looks like he only sacrificed a year of his lifespan." Quote. Taisho said, "He'll be out for a good while. You're one lucky fox, even if you are a five-tailed kitsune that jutsu is like opening several of the celestial gates." Naruto shook his head side to side slowly to avoid too much pain. Why the hell did he do that? A full year of his life gone for that one jutsu I did to him. Taisho sighed and said, "Zayaku is different. He holds his efficiency in high regard to everything he does. If it appears that he has lost his edge he has to make up for it one way or another. That jutsu was really embarrassing to fall to so he had to attack full force to save face. But an entire year of his life," Naruto said with a guilty voice. Had he known he wouldn't have put Zayaku up to that jutsu. He doesn't think much of his life. He considers it an expendable part of himself. All he worries about is his money, his efficiency, and his team, Taisho said with a slight chuckle. "You feeling better?" Atami asked as she approached the small group with Zayaku hanging on her shoulder. "I have probably 3 broken ribs, a cracked spine, tons of bruising." "Yeah, I'm spectacular," Naruto said with a grin. Truth be told, his body was quickly mending itself already, he would be ready to move in a matter of minutes. Whether he could move due to exhaustion, however, was a whole different matter. "Smart," Atami said with a glare when suddenly she felt the weight of Zayaku lift from her shoulder. "I'll take him home for him to get some rest. Atami, you stay here and make sure Naruto gets up eventually," Taisho said with a laugh as he snapped into a puff of smoke. "Wonderful. Stuck with the fox," Atami said sourly as she stared at Naruto on the ground. "Atami, what was that thing with his eyes?" Naruto asked, deciding he might as well get as much info he can. "His bloodline, it's a lot different than most though," Atami said as she took a swig from her scroll. Well, I have no idea what it does. Zai-kun has never told me," Atami said, completely missing what she had called Zayaku. "Zai-kun?" Naruto asked, noticing the affectionate name. Hey, I'm drunk. Give me a break, Atami said with a slight blush on her face. Anyway, what was that he called out before his jutsu? I've never heard attacks like it, Naruto said as Atami cleared her throat. A while ago on a mission outside the village we ran into this traveler. He started spouting off things about this religion in a faraway land. Mainly these things called the seven deadly sins. Zai-kun persuaded the traveler to explain everything to him, and from then on he came up with those weird jutsu, Atami explained with a shrug. Naruto nodded the best he could, then he began to think. The more Naruto thought of it, this team was really similar to his old team. The dark brooder filled in by Zayaku, the playful jester filled in by himself, the sensei filled in with Taishoin. What the hell was Atami? What's your story, Atami? Naruto asked, curious since the question had filled his mind. Story. What do you mean? Atami asked with a raised eyebrow. Well, now don't get mad at me, but your sake addiction, Naruto said, bracing for a yelling fit. Atami sighed and sat down next to Naruto. You've heard of Sukin, right? Yeah. You get drunk and suddenly you're an excellent fighter, Naruto said. That was about all he knew. It's a taijutsu style of fighting that once you're drunk your movements become powerful and completely unpredictable. You have to be born with it and you can't learn it, Atami said as she stared out into nothingness. My mother and father were both excellent Sukin users, and since I was their daughter they expected me to know how to use it too. When I was a baby my mother would sometimes feed me sake instead of milk just to enhance my Sukin, Atami said with a glare on her face. Oh, they were pissed when I couldn't use it. My father called me a disgrace and cursed my very existence. My mother just didn't say anything to me and acted as if I was invisible. It was too late at that point and I was already addicted. Now if I don't have it the shock from withdrawal could kill me, Atami finished as she held up her scroll, undoing the genjutsu on it and turning it into a small talker. Eye with a seal painted on it. This holds as much sake as 8 barrels thanks to the seal, Atami said as she spun the tokuri in the light. She redid the heavy genjutsu and put it back onto her belt without a word. That, Naruto said the only words that could form in his mind. It reminded him of something similar to someone close to him. Then his eyes drooped and he felt his heart fell. Hinata-chan, he whispered to himself, but unfortunately Atami caught it. Hinata, the Hyuga heiress. You know her? Atami questioned, to which Naruto turned his head to the side in shame. Yeah, I know her. I live at the Hyuga compound, Naruto said, to which Atami raised an eyebrow. You live there? She asked, then Naruto nodded. So, why did you look so bad when you first came to training this morning? Atami asked, curiosity tinting her tone. Most anyone living there under main house privileges were treated like kings. I just had a long day yesterday, Naruto growled, but being half drunk Atami didn't acknowledge it. Hey, bullshit. If I can tell when Zai-kun is lying I can sure as hell tell when you are, half drunk or not, Atami said as Naruto turned his head quickly to her with a snarl. Shut up. He growled, but suddenly was floored by a shooting pain all over his body. It was horrible, and suddenly he heard a very familiar voice. Kid, just tell her it's not like she'll remember. What harm could it do? Atami was probably messed up out of her head at the moment, might as well tell her. She was a girl and might be able to help. Hinata-chan, found out something, Naruto cracked with a saddened tone. Oh, found out what? You sleep around on her or something? Atami laughed while Naruto glared. No, she doesn't think of me that way anyway, Naruto said, fading at the end. Whatever, if it's so horrible of a thing that she found out, confront her about it. It could be what you think or it could be something entirely different, Atami said just before she took a drink from her scroll. That would have been so wise if she hadn't just done that, Naruto thought as he slowly sat up, his strength finally back to working levels. Thanks Atami, Naruto said as he stretched a bit, trying to get feeling back into his body. What the hell for? Atami asked, apparently getting more drunk every time she took a drink of her scroll. For the advice, for the history of you guys. I'd ask about Teisho sensei, but I have to get going, things to do. See you later, Atami, Naruto said, and with that he left with a wave and a grin. Atami looked around the training grounds and found she was the only one around. Well, this is boring, Atami said with half-lidded eyes and a red blush over her cheeks. As she hiccuped, her mind didn't register the fading light of day and the clearing clouds in the sky. I think I'll go bother Zai-kun, she said with a drunken smirk as she disappeared in a blur.